feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Wednesday afternoon. It's December 18th, and the plan today is to talk about Cat, the season he's having, his fit with the Knicks, and maybe how the Wolves are going to sort of match up against him, what the Cat part of this Wolves-Knicks matchup is going to look like on Thursday. That's kind of the part I'm most intrigued about. I have Britt Robson here from Mint Post. Britt wrote his column this week about on Jaden McDaniels, and we'll talk about kind of how Jaden has recaptured that defensive effectiveness over these last few weeks that was present last season and the season before. Probably going to be a critical piece in this Wolves-Knicks matchup again on Thursday. I'm excited to get into all this stuff, Britt. I've been looking forward to doing a kind of Cat-centric episode with you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I think that it's a pleasant topic.
Right. Yeah, both ways.
Which is interesting because when he was here, the fact that we had to cover him every day, and he exists in a polarizing milieu among the Wolves fan base. Obviously, more positive now because he's playing better, and the critics don't have to bemoan the fact that he's on their teams, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that there was a period of time. I mean, I covered him his entire career. You covered him almost his entire career here. And let's face it, he was always a polarizing figure. There were always narratives on about him that had a lot more to do with how people took his personality and translated it to his game rather than, and not that that wasn't inaccurate sometimes, but it was oversold. His corniness was oversold.
It was like,
and it's just great to be, it's great to be able, I'm perfectly fine talking about Cat's personality now as well. But I think the news is that he may be having his best season in the NBA. Statistically, it's certainly, he leads the entire NBA in defensive rebounding percentage and overall rebounding percentage. His true shooting percentage, I think, is like the second best of his career, which is pretty phenomenal. It's right up there anyway. And his impact on the game at both ends of the court has been positive for the Knicks.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this here a couple of weeks ago, maybe when we were on here, of like just the way I consume the NBA at large is in these little like 2-game pockets, right? Like,
right.
I whatever team the Wolves are playing next, I watch at least their previous game, and then I watch them in person when they play the Wolves. It works really well for me. I feel like I have these like real touchstones of teams over the course of the year. Obviously, that leaves me a little more underexposed to the Eastern Conference just by the
Sure.
nature of the schedule. And I was feeling, I think I was talking to you, maybe it was with Jace. I was feeling like kind of bummed with myself of how little I'd been really locked in at all on the Knicks at the beginning of the season.
I have not watched the Knicks as much as I've watched many other teams.
Yeah. And so I did make it because I knew that, I knew that this was going to be a week where we're going to want to talk about Cat. So I have watched the last like 4 or I think 4 games, but it's in this weird NBA Cup sort of break where that 4 games ago for the Knicks was like a really long time ago, and I'm like, so whatever. We've put in, we've obviously we covered Cat forever, but it's just was interesting in these past couple of weeks to pay more attention to them and to sift through, what I am seeing to be truth versus what I've kind of read or seen on Twitter or stuff over the course of the year. There's that while there where with Cat, they were like, oh, it can't defend the rim at all. And, his defensive field goal percentage at the rim is this and this. When you actually like look at it and watch it, it's at least recently when I've been really locked in. It's been clear that defensive rebounding is huge, which is a part of defense as you highlighted there.
Right.
But also like they're better defensively with Cat on the floor this year than with Cat off. Not great. I mean, Cat's obviously a better offensive player than he is a defensive player. There's no breaking news there. but they're 16th overall in defense. And I think maybe we thought the Knicks were better defensively last season, but I was just looking it up this morning. You know, they were 10th last season, 19th the season before that, 11th the season before that, and then that first Tibbs year, they were 3rd defensively. So they haven't been like a great defensive team for a while now, and they're 16th this year. That's not good. They want to be better than that, but I think you would expect to be better than that because you traded all those picks for Mikal Bridges. Not because, you know, Cat's here and is an imperfect defender and drop. I don't know. It stood out to me that the numbers there, and we can talk about those more a little bit later.
And they're 5th in net rating. I mean, they are 16th in defense, but I think they're 3rd or 5th. There's something. They're 3rd. I got it right here. Actually, they're 3rd in offensive rating.
Yeah, third in offensive rating. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, that's at almost 120 points per 100 possessions. You know, which is really good. Yeah. Even in the modern NBA. And when the Cat's on the floor, they're almost a point better. They're like 125. You know, that again, 120.5, not 125. And I know you used cleaning the glass, so you've cleaned up some of the
but it's close.
The garbage stats. But on the other hand, you know, I mean, Cat's very rarely on the court in garbage time anyway, so that aspect doesn't matter. But anyway, defensively, I think it's really, really beneficial. If you've been a regular part of a number one defense, you learn a lot about defense. That's a good point. Even if you're not very great at it, you know, you learn what timing and teamwork and trust are all about. And I think that you foster those kinds of good habits. And let's face it, Cat was always more comfortable as a center anyway, not necessarily a drop center, but still, he likes playing center more than he likes playing power forward because it is less taxing in some ways, and he is not on an island. He's not a closeout kind of guy. And I think that the way the Knicks have guys who can get after it and protect him a little bit in that way. Now, obviously, Bridges is having a down year. But, I mean, Josh Hart and none of these guys are terrible defenders. Brunson even is not a terrible defender. And Tibbs has principles that Cat was familiar with, you know, from 2 years spent with him here. So I think it's a combination. I think it's the fact that the experience of being in a groove defensively, and you want to get back to that, and you know how to get back to that, even if your players, your teammates aren't cooperating as well as your former players were, you have a sense of how you could be a positive contributor. And I see that on the court with him. I see him, you know, doing a little bit more individual rotation protection that maybe not is totally in the scheme, knowing where he's going to go or not go. And I've seen him just have more confidence on the court. Remember the times when like two guys would be coming at him toward, you know, dribble penetration and his man also kind of leaning in, and he would almost always make the wrong decision, you know?
Yeah, it's guarding two. Yeah, basically any spot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't think that's necessarily good, but I think that's improved. And I just think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's playing with confidence. And, you know, this New York transition has not been a disaster. Perhaps on the contrary, it's where the arena where he grew up fantasizing about playing in. It's the Big Apple. It's the hallowed hall, the mecca of basketball, whatever. So I think he's having fun, and I think it shows.
It was interesting at practice yesterday. We're asking Gobert and Conley and Finch a lot about Carl, and Finch was asked about Cat in New York and how he's being asked to play there and how it's different than it was with the Wolves. Obviously, the positional shift is the key thing there. Sure. And Finch referred to it as, or they used to call it the cheat code when Cat would be at the 5 offensively. I'll play this clip, but this is this is proving true.
I remember the cheat code.
Yeah. I'll play this clip.
Seems like he's kind of just like a top 5 defense in himself.
Yeah.
Is Carl, like from the year you had him before the Rudy trade, and then obviously what they're doing in New York, like is him at the 5 almost like a top 5 offense in itself?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we used to call it the cheat code. It's just a cheat code to like great shots, great offense, great. I mean, his ability to score at all levels and distort the floor and all that kind of stuff. It's just it's definitely a driver of great offense.
And to your point, Britt, they've been third in offense this season, better with Cat on the floor than off. It reminds me of the Tibbs year, right? They were the Tibbs Wolves season, the first Jimmy year,
right?
When the Wolves were, I think they were 4th on offense, maybe 26th. On defense there,
right.
But they weren't totally using Cat as the cheat code, but I think that was Jace's question there. To Jace's kind of point, if you are playing with Cat as your cheat code and playing through that, it is not hard to be a top 5 offense. Credit to Cat, he will drive it, but if you point the ships in that direction, we saw it for many years, like. You are going to get good offense, not just for Cat, but as Finch said, it kind of can transcend the group there.
And what broke the code was the idea of crashing, doubling down or putting a big small or small big, however you want to put it, a power forward, combo forward type that is aggressive. Nicholas Batum was the obvious guy. I mean, he was the guy who really kind of almost personally broke the cheat code because he's really smart defender. He's really versatile defender. He's the kind of guy that is not going to get bullied in the low post easily, but he's going to stay with Cat off the bounce and he's going to contest somebody out on the perimeter. I mean, having that, most of the time the cheat code was broken when you harassed Cat in the post, because that is something that he did not respond well to at all. It was easy, especially if his back was to the basket or just basically coming at him from ways he couldn't see. Really unnerved him. And he got better at it as he saw more of it, but and I don't want to jump ahead to matchups and everything, but I got to think that will at least be a part of that, moving ahead.
Right. Yeah. I do want to, we'll grab the break and talk about matchups, but the Batum one is the one we all remember.
Right.
And it's because it was the first time, it was the beginning of that season, and the Wolves had 2 games in a row against the Clippers at the beginning of the season, and they put Batum on Cat there, and it really was confounding, to Carl and the Wolves offense as a whole. And I remember in training camp that year, Ryan Saunders was fired from the Wolves, but he was with the Clippers in training camp with Ty Lue there that season. And I would imagine that, it's one of those things that doesn't really make sense to do against Carl unless you've kind of seen it been done against him. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
And I am curious to that end about how the Wolves are going to approach matchups with this as well. Cause Finch coached him for a very long time. He experienced the Batum look. He experienced the baseline doubles or the doubles from the top. Like Finch has coached against every defense that Carl has faced, if that makes sense. And now it's his turn to kind of enact that against Carl. I'm fascinated to see what he does.
Yeah, and I think that what is kind of cool about that is not only that aspect, but Finch has limited but still tangible experience coaching Cat against Gobert.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I mean, that in and of itself is another fascinating matchup that has gone back and forth. I mean, Gobert has won some of those battles clear cut. Cat has won some of those battles clear cut. And
Dude, there was one of those that season too where they played the Jazz back to back. Do you remember that? Carl had like
I remember it very
7
well.
threes against Gobert in Utah, and then the next game it was a back to back against each
Gobert
other
refused
in Minnesota
to concede. Yeah, right.
And I'm gonna try and find some clips from that. I'll try and tweet that out. Maybe
I mean, but that it is. It's a fascinating dynamic. And then there's the Jalen Brunson factor. I mean, Brunson is very, very hard to guard one-on-one just because he's really tricky. I mean, he draws fouls. He's got an all-around game. He can shoot from anywhere on the court. His hesitation dribble drive is underrated, in my opinion. He's always been a good pull-up shooter. He's gotten smarter and more selfless. He's not as ball hoggy, and Cat has really benefited from that. So if you if you try to break the cheat code on Cat, Brunson can burn you.
All right. Well, let's grab our first break, and then me and Britt will talk about what we think the matchups for this game, this Wolves Knicks game, will look like. First, though, today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. I have 3 dates of stuff I want to put on your radar at Falling Knife. First, this Thursday, obviously, is Wolves Knicks, 8:30 tip time. They will stay open for the entirety of that game. Normally, they would close before 11:30, but they stay open for the entire Wolves Knicks game. But they also are having the initials game trivia at 7:30 there. So kind of the hour before Wolves Knicks, the initials game that you may know from Cave. I think it's the Power Trip Morning Show does that. That will be going on at 7:30 in the tap room there. And then on Christmas Day, they're going to be open. Me and Britt's friend Dan, who owns Falling Knife, is going to be in the tap room from noon to 6 on Christmas Day while the Wolves are on. So if you're looking for something to do on Christmas Day, a place to go watch it, maybe with the family, go have some beers in the tap room. That's Christmas Day. And then New Year's Eve, they do their New Year's early party. We've been telling you about that. They do this every year. I think it's a great idea. Rather than having a New Year's Eve party from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., they do it from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Ball drop, whatever is at 8 p.m. And they kind of just shift the hours up, get you there early, get you home earlier, get a cheaper Uber ride home. So that's all coming up at Falling Knife here in the coming weeks. We'll remind you of that as we get closer to that date. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. And then also I was gonna I do these prize picks on here. Normally they don't have the games, the next Wolves game up, but they do because there's been some days off. So I just pulled some Wolves Knicks ones. Cat's more or less than for rebounds is 13, which I was like, wow, that's high. But he's gotten 13 or more rebounds in 8 of the Knicks' last 9 games, which is wild. I put Jaden McDaniels on here, more or less than 16.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. If you think he's going to kind of continue on his trend, he's obviously been killing that the last few games. How's Brunson going to play? How are the Wolves going to match up with him? His more or less is 23.5 points. I also threw Randall on here, more or less than 19.5 points. I think we forget sometimes that this is a revenge game for Julius Randle as well. So, if you listen to this on Wednesday, Wednesday evening or whatever, I mean, they're up right now. If you want to make a daily fantasy lineup at Prize Picks, you can do that at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. Use promo code Dane, and your account will be credited with $50 when you make your first $5 lineup. Okay, Britt, let's talk about how they're going to match up.
All right.
And you got to what I think is an important part about this. It's not just who is going to guard Cat. It's also who and how are you going to guard Jalen Brunson in this alignment. I guess maybe we can start with the Cat part of it. The 2 obvious options there are, putting Rudy on him. There's been a lot of Rudy on Anthony Davis. You think a big beginning of the year is Rudy on Anthony Davis, Sabonis. They were just all it's Rudy against opposing centers. They've tweaked that a little bit recently. We've seen more Julius Randle occasionally.
Yeah. Rudy is a lurker. That happened the last game.
So I don't know. What do you think? Do you go straight Rudy? Do you go Randle on him with Rudy in the spy? A mixture of the two. What are you thinking about that match? That part of the matchup?
I mean, I hate to sound iffy, but I think there are three options, and I think they're all viable. I mean, I think the Rudy option is viable. I think the Randall option with Rudy lurking is viable, and I think the Jaden McDaniels as Nick Batum.
Yeah, I have that written down here too. Okay, you want to play that one because
I mean that is the one that most exposes you to Brunson killing you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it will produce more fly around because if Jaden is pretty much leaning on Cat, then that leaves Rudy and Randall having to deal with wings moving around. And so I would imagine that is the most switch-oriented, movement-oriented defense.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably holds the biggest risk for a number of reasons. One is that movement. Moving Rudy and Randall at the same time with neither one of them having it be by nature a fly around for everybody, kind of almost a 1-5 switch, not necessarily, but anyway.
Or it could be no fly around. It could just be switch everything like the Boston, like that against Boston.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues with that is, are there people on the Knicks that you don't need to guard, kind of,
And
I mean,
that is the question. And that's because, okay, so if you're going to put Julius Randle, we're just talking about the Wolves starting five right now.
Right.
If you're going to put Julius Randle on Cat, or if you're going to put Jaden McDaniels on Cat, which I'll just say now I think is a more fun idea that you and I would talk about and is less likely to happen in reality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But in either of those scenarios, you need to be able to put Rudy somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think the answer, if it's Randle or McDaniels on Cat, then Rudy has to guard Josh Hart. Which you leave yourself open for the possibility of the Terrence Mann thing, where Rudy's lurking and Terrence Mann, or in this case Josh Hart, hits 5 threes from the corner in the first half, and you go, okay, well that plan, they broke it. It's you run that risk there, but I think I'm most into starting with Randall on him and starting with that, with Rudy playing off of Hart. And and adjusting, throwing different things there,
right.
but starting until that's exposed in any way, whether that be Hart making threes or Cat just cooking Randall, But that's where I would start it. Yeah. I will say I think Finch is just going to go straight up, and he'll put Rudy on Cat, Ant on Bridges, Conley on Hart, Randall on OG, and McDaniels on Brunson. That would be my guess of what actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Although I don't know if Conley is a bad option against Brunson. Conley would be the option on Brunson if you have McDaniels on. Mm-hmm. And then it isn't even, I mean, you're almost playing like a matchup zone. I mean, let's face it. And so, but you're right. If they play it straight, I think if they're playing it straight with Randall, then I agree that Hart would probably be the guy. One of the advantages of that is you have Rudy on Hart. Hart is a devastating rebounder, not as much this year because Cat's getting so many rebounds, but Hart's one of those guys who gets loose balls.
Corner crasher. Yeah.
Corner crasher. And just he's one of those guys that when the Wolves are not humming, they're giving up offensive rebounds and having possessions extended and getting frustrated or out of sync because of it. I like the idea of, I don't think that will happen as often if Rudy is kind of the one that is lurking there because, he'll have less to do with terms of on-ball coverage and more to do with getting the paint cleared in some way, shape, or form, whether it's rebounding or making sure nobody's crashing. So they all have advantages and disadvantages. And that's why when I look at it, I think the Knicks will have much better luck against this Wolves defense. I mean, let's face it, they've held 5 or 6 of their last 7 opponents under 93 points or something.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen, I don't think. I just think the Knicks are a really good offense for a lot of reasons, especially if Bridges is hitting a shot. which gives them a third option of a guy who has in his career gone months averaging like 24 points a game. So he's not nothing, and if you just let him go, he can burn you too. About
the Brunson part of it, like I think the Wolves have different guys that can throw up Brunson. You just got to like choose and execute who it is. Obviously, Jaden is the expectation there, but it's just, why do they not have other options to guard Brunson? Like, why can't Ant do that?
And that's kind of why I'm leaning in. I mean, not leaning in. I'm tickled by the idea of McDaniels on Cat because I do think, if not Ant, I do think Conley.
I do too.
We'll do a good job on him because Brunson isn't exceptionally fast. He's cagey. Well, Conley's a smart defender, so caginess may not be as big a deal there. Plus, it's easier matchups on the fly. I imagine Brunson will be guarding Conley, but I don't know that for a fact.
Oh, I would. Yeah, I would assume that. I think a pet peeve of this is having a pet peeve of the best defense in the NBA is, I understand, is a little dumb. But last season, a pet peeve of mine was they would be matched up in a specific way, tactically, like this, of like, hey, because we want to. It was often when they were wanting to get Rudy in the spy, right? Like, then it really mattered who's at the point of attack. Like, how are we doing this? And this Wolves team has always had a super casual approach to cross matching. Yeah, just kind of like.
I wonder why Ant is a part of that. Ant picks up who he feels like. Exactly. I want you to say it out loud. They have a problem with matchups because Ant decides who he wants to match up with. Most of the time, not always, but I would say.
But it's been issues in other seasons too, where guys would do that. I even think to like Jared Vanderbilt, another awesome defender. He would just he'd pick up who he wanted too.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes like Cat and Rudy would just be like, nope, I want the setter this time, or I got like.
Right, you're right.
And it bothered. I say that. It bothered me in the Dallas series a lot when those cross matches were. And that was like a matchup, an opponent that I think you had to be a little bit more specific about who and how you match up.
Well, their roles were so specific on offense.
Well, Dallas is just like they show you their 5 cards and they go, well, we're still going to beat you with these 5 cards.
Exactly. And so if you want to say, well, okay, let's make that card a wild card. That's really what you're doing if you're kind of ignoring the best matchup. Yeah. So
hearts are wild. Josh.
Exactly. So, it is. It's a fun thing to contemplate because
it's also something that you would like, that people like us, it's the fodder we love to go into.
And also you throw in the stuff that everybody else loves, Cat coming home and just being consumed with, the guy is just going to be, he may cry on the court, it may happen. And it may be that, and he may be phenomenal, which we've seen when Cat has been emotional. And it may be that he comes out like whipping ridiculous transition passes that, go 7 rows into the crowd because he wants to put on a show. It can go either way. It is, aside from the fact I do think the Knicks will score and I think the Wolves will score, I would take the over on whatever the points is for this particular game. I really don't have any idea how this will go because there's so many interesting factors here.
So fun. I love it. Yeah, I love the basketball part of it, and I have a soft spot for Cat, like covering him. So I'm into all that stuff. I will say to the passes point, it's not that the over the head passes are gone. It's not that the pass. I've seen them in New York too, like sailing the stands. Right. To my eye, down. It's down, and you know why? It's the spread floor look. Like when Carl is up at like the elbow extended or at the top of the key, and the elbow the corner over there, the places that Carl catches the ball, right? And he kind of looks to make the pass. Well, the Knicks are intentionally cutting through those zones a lot more than the Wolves did. We were always like, oh, we want McDaniels to cut through here, do this more. But part of that is because Rudy isn't sitting in the dunker spot, and the rim protector that's guarding Rudy isn't then sitting at the rim. So Carl's able to make more of these audacious passes they run that like rub thing with Brunson all the time, Bridges as a cutter, Hart as a cutter, and there's just room in the lane. So the audacious passes work more often because there's less, there's less defenders there. Now, if you're the Wolves, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same spread thing, but you're long. Like be long, be in the passing lanes. Look to get in and to scramble back out to fly around. Like,
yes,
that's an important thing to take away.
And also, I do think that while Cat his turnovers are down fairly significantly. I mean, I think they're under 3 a game, which is for him pretty good. And but I do think when Cat is emotional, he wants to put on a show. And I do think the simple pass is his friend that will be ignored in this game. I think that he, at least early, will want to throw some pretty dimes into the mix. And we know what happens on those sometimes.
Lowest, just pulled it up here. Lowest turnover rate of his career since that 2017-18 season.
Okay.
Which was his last season that he was like truly functioning.
That was his first year with Tibbs proper, right?
No, well, second. That's Jimmy year. So 16.
Oh, was 17, it the Jimmy year? Okay. Well, that's why then. Yeah, he didn't have the ball as much.
Those are the only 2 seasons that Carl has had a lower turnover rate than this season is. Here's what I put up on the screen. Are those 2 seasons with Tibbs in Minnesota? So 12.6 this year with Tibbs, and then his other 2 lowest turnover seasons were 16-17 and 17-18 with Tibbs there too.
And he's over 50% in all 3 of those years, which is a good. I mean, if Cat is better than average in turnover rate, you're doing the right things.
Yeah, because you look at all those other numbers to the left of it that I have up on the screen right now. It's almost 1.3 points per shot attempt. That's crazy. The assist rate is still there. The usage is still, really, really high for a big. I mean, this is a serious offensive weapon that the Wolves have to account to. So I guess to bring it back to the matchups point, we can play this theoretical chess game of how it's all going, but I think a big part of it is a willingness to kind of diversify and find different things throughout the course of the game, show Carl different looks. I think we saw Carl be flustered by different looks over his time in Minnesota. I did ask, just because you weren't there yesterday, I guess for not just for you, but for the listeners too. I did ask Rudy about Randall and the spiral a little bit more often. I'll play that clip here. I think he's starting to see some value in that.
I bet he is.
Last year, you and Carl could interchange who was like guarding the center, and you would roam sometimes. One, how valuable was it to have that in your bag last year? And then 2, seems like that's happened in the last couple of games against Davis and Wembanyama, where Julius has kind of taken that a little bit. Like, is that something that's important to have?
For sure. I mean, it's important to have size, and Julius is a big body, so we know that he can hold his own, on the post and on the balls against probably anyone in this league. So usually it's good to be able to have the flexibility to give teams a different look, throw them off a little bit, and then go with the flow of how things go. A lot of times I'm going to end up getting back to the main guy, like Wemby, like we did in the second half against the Spurs. Or sometimes if it's really, really working and and they're not finding any solutions, stay the way it works.
Do you have any preference?
No, not really. I mean, for me, it's. I love challenges, obviously. So if the guy really start getting going, I'm going to say I want him. But if it's a team game, so if as a team we're having success, we're doing something right.
It's an interesting one, it's interesting proposition there. From a Rudy standpoint, I guess the part of it that I envision as he's talking there, if it is Randall, which I said is what I would like, that makes sense to me. Right. I love Rudy in the spiral. I love Rudy in the spiral more than Rudy apparently loves it there. And I don't know if that's part of him, saying I want to take the challenge or whatever. But my concern is if you have Randall on Cat and, say Jaden on Brunson, I think the Knicks just hammer high pick and roll with Brunson and Towns, and you get Randall into a drop,
Yep.
But Randall isn't a great drop defender. They usually, when Randall's guy is involved in a screen, they switch that. So now I guess maybe you switch Jaden on the Cat in that area, which we like. We said we've liked there some too, but that would be a little bit of my concern of not having Gobert on Towns, is that then Brunson can hurt you in pick and roll action going at Randall versus going at Rudy.
I also think that it's entirely possible that Randall gets in foul trouble early.
Sure.
Just because Cat is really good at this. And Cat has always been able, even when, he wasn't necessarily really in his prime doing this, he understood when to take people off the dribble, when to shoot over them, when to crab dribble and then pass, crab dribble and then hit that turnaround hook. I think that that little jump hook, he can do that on Randall all day if he gets position. And that's, I think, one of the keys if you're looking at like really the inner workings of this. Can Randall fight him for post space early? Can he do his homework early? That hasn't been one of his things. At the same time, when he has done it, it's really up to the ref because he's not subtle about it. Randall will hit you early if he can get away with it. And he kind of needs to make sure that Cat can't just hit that bunny hook on him because he is small and that's a devastating shot against the smaller, big of the post.
And that's what will be telling about what Finch's position on all of this is. Because Finch knows that the thing to do is to, and Carl, a flaw of his is he doesn't do his work early to get deep position in the post.
Yep.
So if they're going to try and play through Carl in the post there, then if you're Finch or the coaching staff, you're saying, we're not letting Carl catch at 8 feet here. Like, Julius, you're not going to win that. And you need to do that early. So I think that will be telling of how much faith they have in Randall to be able to do that. Right. If they put to whatever degree they put Randall.
And it could be, 2 early whistles on Randall. Then you get interesting. Then you have Nas.
I was going to say.
And that
not forget about the bench.
That gets fun. Because then you put Rudy on Cat, and you have Nas as kind of not necessarily the floater, but somebody who
have him ignore Hart or Precious Achua or whatever. Yeah, like you can invert it a little bit.
Right. And then DiVincenzo, is a really good rebounder and a good low man. And there's just a lot of cool possibilities here. DiVincenzo is having a really disappointing year outside shooting, and he's also as a decision maker has fallen off a lot from what he looked so good in preseason. But as a guy to push the pace, as long as he can just do the simple pass after he's pushed the pace, and as a rebounder, especially on defense, but at both ends of the court, I love the way he rebounds. The guy, and that's going to be, they're not like last year's Knicks, but the Knicks can rebound, and you're going to need your smalls to rebound.
Well, let's you bring up Dante DiVincenzo in the preseason too. Like, let's not forget about the Wolves Knicks Dante DiVincenzo versus Jalen and Rick Brunson thing too. That's like a whole like.
Oh, right.
And even outside of the Rick Brunson part of it, whatever. Like they're like Jalen Brunson and Dante DiVincenzo are like best friends. There's like that brother sort of thing too. So I think Dante is maybe part of the equation of ways that guys you can put on Brunson here. That's what I keep coming back to is like. I was texting some people last night about like, how do you think they match this up? And it's like, well, you need to be really need to care about who the Brunson matchup is too. And of course, of course you have to care about the Brunson thing, but I'm like, if you're not like seeing the Wolves roster, I see like 4 options.
Yeah, Naw, DDV, McDaniels, and Conley, just off the top of my head.
Ant.
Yeah, I think what I worry about with Ant is that, well, I mean, maybe I don't. I was going to say that they were not only in the Olympics together, they were in the World Cup together 2 years ago. So there's a
and then Ant made the Olympic team, and Jalen did it.
Yeah.
That's
right. Jalen did Jalen didn't? No, he was on the team, wasn't he? Wasn't on the Olympic team.
Yeah,
I thought he might have been on the Olympic team and didn't play, but no, that was
Halliburton.
Halliburton. Okay. Oh, interesting. That is interesting.
That's a thing.
Oh, that is a thing. Yeah, that is a thing.
I don't know. I mean, it's all setting up to be, if we didn't cover the Wolves or didn't have any, history of watching Cat or whatever.
Right.
This is a game that I was just like an NBA fan. I'd be like 8:30 TNT. Like, this is just going to be interesting basketball, star power stuff too, with Ant and Brunson and Cat, Rudy, Randall. It's going to be a fun
and the way the two teams have been playing, the Knicks have been playing really well, especially on offense, and the Wolves have been playing really well, especially on defense. It's a nice matchup. Yeah, it's a great matchup.
Let me grab our second break. Today's show is again brought to you by Doer Jeans. I've been telling you all December about Doer. Now, they don't only have jeans; they have a whole clothing line. I've been telling you about the Doer Jeans that I have. Extremely comfortable, but also like formal enough to wear to work or out to dinner, whatever it might be. It's a good, obviously last minute Christmas gift that you can get for somebody in your life. But I would really recommend giving yourself a Christmas present. They have they're again really comfortable jeans. They also have like different types of them. They have like some lined ones that are made for winter. It's just, I think sometimes we just buy pants or like whatever, they're pants, and then you actually buy a good pair and you're able to really distinguish the difference. So trust me, I literally wear these. These are something in my closet. I think you will like the Doer jeans as much as I do. You can check out Doer's flagship stores in LA or Denver, or more easily shop online at shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. If you put that /DaneMoore in there right now, my listeners get 20% off their first purchase when you use that exclusive URL, shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. That's a good deal. Don't wait to get 20% off. Go now to shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. And I will just say, in general, for whenever I'm doing these ad reads to listeners, all those URLs, all those codes, everything, if you go to the show notes, it's all in there. So make sure you get your 20% off, your discount, your bonus, whatever that might be. You can always just go to the show notes, and it is in there. All right, Britt. Let's talk about Jaden. Obviously, we've been talking about him as a big part of this.
Sure.
As a big part of this Wolves Knicks matchup, but he's also a big part of what the Wolves kind of turning the corner here of late. The last 2 games, he's combined to have 20 rebounds and 9 steals. You went into both of those. Some of those numbers are a little, like a steal, it lands in your hand or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes not all rebounds are created equally. But I will say 20 boards, 9 steals last 2 games. In the first 8 games of the season, he had 19 total rebounds and 4 total steals.
Yeah.
And was really underwhelming.
Fouling to the point where he couldn't stay on the court. He's had 9 fouls in the last 6 games.
Yeah.
I think that may be one of the more remarkable stats.
And as you wrote about, in your piece, part of that is about how he's being used or was used differently in that Lakers and Spurs game. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. And I'm curious if you think that should be something Finch is more intentional about going to.
Absolutely.
Getting off the ball. Yeah. Using Jaden off the ball.
I think that, first of all, I think Nah is really good at it. And I think he plays better when I think it's an exhausting job. first of all, let's just start with the basics. Sure. An exhausting job, and so to have two guys share the job more than they have been thus far. Na's obviously the guy when he's in the game, but I would not mind Na, subbing in a little earlier and being the on-ball guy, or even, however it works. I like the idea of getting to a rotation where McDaniels' length on defense is better used for players who play above the waist. What was really interesting to me about both of those two games, he had an impact on Davis. He had an impact on Wemby. Not that he was guarding them necessarily, but he was in the vicinity and screwing things up in terms of sight lines, in terms of pressure. It really helped the Wolves' interior defense. And if he stuck out, just chasing who's ever out there, especially if it's a smaller wing that Na can handle, like Jalen Brunson, right. Then I think that you miss that because Randall, quite frankly, doesn't give you as much of a presence there. He's a stolid guy. He's a guy who is hard to move, but he is not as active. And that activity, those hands, those deflections, those being able to step into passing lanes almost intuitively. When I looked at the 8 steals supposedly in the first quarter, I did see 2 of them that were gifted. One was like it rolled right off the AD's foot right into him, and another one, Randall actually stripped Sochin, I think, and he fumbled it, so he wound up having to try to pass out, and it went right to McDaniels. But the other 6, especially against the Spurs, all 3 of the 4 that he was credited with as steals in the first quarter were things where he denied. First of all, the rim protection was such that, and the Spurs don't necessarily, they do a lot of drive and kick anyway, but there was a driving to the basket, knowing that they couldn't get the shot off, and that twisting pass. Mm-hmm. McDaniels and Rudy were tremendous at that, and they caused a lot of turnovers. And McDaniels got credit for a lot of them, and rightfully so. And so his presence in the paint is great. What I love about that, and this is kind of a new phenomena, he's getting out. He's following through on those turnovers that are being generated. He's trying to turn them into transitions, and that is, this team desperately needs transition-centric, hungry, thirsty guys scoring on the break. McDaniels has really become that in the last 4 or 5 games, and that's really important. And it's not something that Ant is not good at it. Conley, unfortunately, himself is really not that good at it. DiVincenzo and Randall coming over from the Knicks are both they both look to do that. And McDaniels looks to do that. And ironically, those are the guys that kind of suffer, in other ways on this team. So try to activate that, turn them over, get the transition points. I want to lean into that a little bit more. And I think one of the ways you do that, long answer to a simple question, but is to not have him be on the ball all the time so that you can do that.
I agree completely. I mean, it became something I was really into last season as an option to just mitigate foul trouble for him. Like he just, so much when Jaden has had serious foul trouble issues, it's been from picking him up on somebody like Trae Young or Jalen Brunson, who are small and kind of, doing that stop and go sort of thing,
right? Exactly.
To goat fouls in that sort of way. But I just think like Jaden is an extremely talented low man rim protector and has a really good instinct for when and how to like collapse onto somebody in the paint as like a late doubler. And it's just, I I think this team has gotten a lot better in their low man presence. I think Randall's gotten better at it. I think Reid has gotten better at it when he's there. Even the guards, Ant is a little bit more onto it. But they don't have low man talent like Jaden does. And it's really something I would lean into. I think it's something that, if you do have Randall kind of bumping up against Cat and then Jaden slowly kind of lurking over, maybe he's matched up on Hart or Bridges on the opposite side, or kind of like ducking in so as to, kind of take away that Cat hook shot. Or even just eat up some of the passing lanes for Cat to kick out of there. I mean, Cat's a pretty good passer in that way. Like, he'll probably expose Jaden once or twice, but then that's that X out thing, right? Now Conley sprints over to Bridges or whatever in the corner, and Jaden sprints back out above the break to make that X, right? Like, I don't know. I think just because Jaden is awesome on the ball and made an all defensive team by being an elite point of attack defender doesn't necessarily mean that that's what he's best at or most valuable in every matchup. And it's been a stroke of luck in some ways that the Lakers or the Spurs haven't really had a guy that
LeBron didn't play.
Mm-hmm. And it just isn't really a Jalen Brunson on the Spurs either. So I just think it like kind of showed you something of like, hey, maybe this is Finch. This is something you can go to a little bit more often. He was actually asked about that at practice yesterday. Play that.
Oh, good.
A little bit eye-opening, just how impactful he can be these last couple games when he doesn't have to have like that primary defensive assignment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because he's such a great defender everywhere, and he's always been one of our best rim protectors or low man defenders. But it's just, we're lucky now. Now that we got everyone guarding on the ball at a good clip, like, we can look at maybe employing him elsewhere. But we also know he's really, really good there.
I just don't think I would have been like 10 rebounds.
Yeah.
Well, you could always account some of it for the fact that he's on the ball.
I mean, it's the same with we've been looking at Julius rebound numbers, and some of it we put Julius in switch situations which carries him away from the hoop. Some of it's just it's what we do to them. It's not what they're doing to themselves.
That's an interesting answer, right?
Yeah, he's not going to do it.
I can tell that, but it's what we do to them, not what they do to themselves, sort of thing. That's the rebound.
No. Well, I mean, again, I'm going to get through an episode without bashing Julius Randle once, I think. But I do think that he's very, very protective. Chris Finch knows the game and the inner workings of the game and where the flaws and the strengths are, the vices and the virtues, much better than we do. So all these little insights into where Randall is flawed, he doesn't want to get into those areas. And when he ventures into those areas, he wants to cover Randall's ass because it's a delicate situation. And so I think that one of the reasons you put Jaden in that paint-centric area, more and more of a presence, and your defense gets better and better, but it also there's trade-offs, of course. But I think that it's an experiment that if it works extremely well, hurts the ongoing, then what do you do with Randall?
Yeah, I mean, I could take it a different direction, though. Yes, they want to use your word, to cover Julius's ass defensively, but they wanted to do that with Cat last year too, and they did. And the ass,
and that's
cover,
again why McDaniels will be on the ball. See,
but it was Kyle Anderson that helped Cat at the 5 minutes, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so for my point is, or theory is, that if it's Jaden with Randall out there, but in more of the Kyle Anderson role as the 4, off the ball, length in the lane, situational doubles, that sort of thing. If Jaden played like a souped up Kyle Anderson defensively next to Julius, then I think you do have that covered.
That's what I mentioned in my column. Yeah, I mean, I specifically, that was, I was trying to look at first unit options and second unit options for him.
Mm-hmm.
And a very viable second unit option, in my opinion. And I mentioned in my column that it requires a lot more fly around from the other three guys, but is to have Randall be the de facto 5 and Jaden be the de facto 4 in a high movement defense. And what that does, that also does two things that are also helpful to the Wolves. One, Jaden is hitting 46% of his threes in the month of December, 6 games. It's a small sample size, but catch and shoot, he looks like he's really confident in that shot right now. And he came up his first year, he was almost nothing but a catch and shoot 3 guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Randall loves those kind of guys around him because
good point.
That's his game. And so those two work really well. And then if you're talking about like the golden 5, like the best 5-person unit, they don't have either Randall or McDaniels in them. You get to use that 5 a little, not tremendously more, but like 3 or 4 extra minutes a game in the time that you're using that small ball front court. I think that benefits the Wolves too. So there's all different ways where I think that Randall at the 5 and McDaniels at the 4 could work. Now, seeing is believing on a long sample size, but I think it's worth the experiment.
I do think though that I know you're talking about like the golden lineup, and it's because the starting basically any lineup was looking a little bit more golden than the starters at the beginning of the year, because the starters were a mess, and specifically the starters were a mess because they were really struggling to navigate McDaniels and Randall's presence as not great shooters or spacers, while also playing with Rudy Gobert, who sits in the who doesn't shoot or play on the perimeter at all. And we should say, and I just think in my reflection and like kind of looking at some more numbers this week and stuff, like I haven't given the starting 5 enough flowers over the last 2-3
They've been
weeks.
great defensively. They've been incredible.
And we've seen, and to your point, with like Jaden more confidently shooting threes, Julius getting back, like he just kind of like stopped the drive and kick part of his game for a while there. Like that's back. Like that starting 5 group is getting like a little bit more golden. And I don't want to, and it's an important thing to do right now, particularly when we're looking at numbers, is to not hold on to our priors from the beginning of the season.
Good point.
Because like the Jaden stuff was so bad that like if you still look up on off stuff, like the Wolves are significantly worse this season with Jaden on the floor than what went off, even defensively.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, there does need to be a little bit of bifurcation there to understand. It's like the Golden Group's still good. They won him the Spurs game in the fourth quarter. They just kind of choked out Wemby and the Spurs there. Great. That's a good gear to have. But this starting lineup has been pretty good recently too. I'm gonna pull up the lineup at some point. I mean, the numbers even in the aggregate of the starting 5
absolutely
are good. Plus 9.4 net rating.
I have a real soft spot for that Conley backcourt now, though. Sure. Oh man, that is so much fun.
Yeah. But it's cool to have a couple soft spots or to like a couple things,
exactly. And all I'm saying though is if you give that unit 4 or 5 extra minutes, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody. First of all, Nas gets to have fun, and it is to watch Nas go 1 for 10 the other night and be plus 26 and watching everybody focus on his shooting just made me laugh. I mean, I'm the guy who used to rip Nas on a regular basis and everybody else loved him. And it's like everything is totally turned on its head. I'm just wondering, don't you guys see what he's doing? I mean, he's
the offense. Yeah.
He's not hitting his shot right now, fine, but he's playing extremely well. And when that shot hits, he's adapted once again to a kind of a different demand of him. his ceiling is still a ways away.
Yeah.
And that's pretty exciting. Because he's a matchup nightmare in the making, and he is also a really solid team defender in the making in a relatively versatile way. If you make him a combo forward, if you make him a 4 against smaller lineups and a 3 in other lineups, in a perfect world where he's not called on to be a 4 or 5 in some of those lineups. I just think that
it's time to make it though, man. Like it, I love Nas. Like it's his matchup nightmare in the making. It's his thing in the making. It's his thing in the making.
Right.
He's 25. He's a year younger than like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, and he's about to get paid as made. All
right. But I'm glad you brought up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who has been like the focal point of the franchise for 4 years.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Nas has been like the guy, we'll play him, when we feel like it. And meanwhile, we got these other guys that,
You're misconstruing my as Nas needing to make it as in the team needing to.
Okay. Well, that's fair. If you want to, and that's what I'm saying, is that when you have that, what I call the golden lineup or whatever you want to call it, that's ideal for Nas. I mean, that lineup.
Gobert, Reid, DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker, Conley. Yeah. And
other words, fly around guys and Gobert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's what if you're Nas Reid, you want, and the other 4 guys are somewhat interchangeable as long as it's not Randall or McDaniels. It is, you can throw DiVincenzo in there instead, or Conley or Nah, or Ant even, but the point is, nobody gets their groove on in fly around basketball
more than Nas Reid.
As aesthetically pleasing and as gleefully electric in terms of it being contagious.
Right.
I mean, he the things that Jalen Noel used to give you a little whiff of, Jordan McLaughlin used to be able to give you a little whiff of, are the kinds of things that, I mean, when you catch the ball in the corner and a guy's coming at you on the hard closeout, you just wait for it. All right, what's he going to do this time? Mostly it's going to be a crossover dribble slam dunk, but lately he's added, maybe just a little zip to crashing, big or something. He's just, he's a playground player at heart on offense. And when the NBA starts to get into playground mode, Nas comes out,
Yeah, it's I think it's a reason for optimism for the offense in the second half of the season, or these final 2/3 of the season or whatever. Because I think specific to like the second unit, and whether it's that they found that lineup, right? Awesome. But some of the other bench stuff, it seems like they've been searching or wanting or whatever. Mm-hmm. And part of that has been by, trying to empower the necessary inclusion of Rob Dillingham, and that kind of, that lineup right there becomes very different if it's Dillingham instead of Conley. It just does. Doesn't mean
yes, it does.
It doesn't mean that Dillingham and Nas couldn't be a dynamic duo in another sort of lineup configuration. I say it all to mean like they've been searching for these different lineups, and I think with the bench groups, and I think at the cost of Nas and Dante. And my theory here, glass half full to that, is those things will become more intuitive and in time, and I think already have, become that to some degree, that if and when there is a whoa Dante DiVincenzo month, or whoa Nas Reid 6-week stretch, it's because, okay, these things clicked in. Because my theory with Nas forever is he's a rhythm guy, and you need to kind of give him the same things over and over again. It was my whole correct thought process along him and Rudy being able to be good together.
Right.
My theory there was, they had the worst net rating on the team, 2 seasons ago, but it's because they only played for like 2 minutes here or 2 minutes
Right,
there. And
right.
like, sure, over the course of the season, it was like 250 minutes. And you're like, oh, gross numbers. But then a season later, they went to it every game. And it was like Rudy and Nas share the floor for 14 minutes a night. And sure enough, with like kind of building some familiarity, that 2-man pairing goes from the least effective on the team to the best net rating on the team a season ago. And maybe part of that is on Nas to like find some of those things a little bit quicker. I'm not saying it's all on Finch and and the coaching staff or whatever, but yeah, that's where there's something to come here, I think, with this team offensively. Or if I try to figure out how do they become a top 10 offense, for the rest of the season, I think it's through that sort of.
Well, and also I've got to think Tim Connolly's looked at this team and he signed Nas Reid when that wasn't an automatic thing that he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You thought, oh, okay, all right, we're signing Nas for what at the time looked like pretty decent money,
Sure.
And Cat gets traded in this offseason. That doesn't happen unless Nas Reid is part of the future. And again, what I'm seeing there is Conley and by extension Finch understand what they have in Nas. It's just that there's still a lot of debris in the way of
Right.
terms of roster construction for that second timeline. But that, before the trade was made, Finch was talking about Nas being a 3. And so they know what they have here. It's just how do you get to it when Karl Anthony Towns is your second best player and the face of the franchise? How do you get to it when Julius Randle is playing for a player option and is kind of in limbo in terms of his career, and it's fairly obvious that he was acquired as a way station move? Those are delicate situations for both things.
Totally.
And Nas is eating the cost of that, eating the opportunity cost of that. And so I think they got to be telling him, look, man, you're not stupid. You understand what's going on. You understand what we are working toward. We signed you. We got cleared some cap space for you down the road, which is another reason why. I wasn't thinking of it when I said it. I said there's ceiling left for this guy. They are going to build a new room with a higher ceiling for him to get there,
Yeah, for sure.
And they are going to have a team
if they sign him,
features Nas more than it does now in precisely the ways we're looking for, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a blueprint of that room, but like,
right.
He's got to agree to, be here for the building of the room,
Exactly. And that's the thing where, this is always, we don't know.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things about being on the outside of a team is a really good friend of mine used to be best friends with Sam Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
And it still is, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, but was best friends with Sam Mitchell when Sam was coaching Toronto. And he would talk to me, like swore me to secrecy, but Sam told him chapter and verse of what it was like to be a coach in Toronto. And my friend wouldn't talk to me about the Wolves precisely because I write for the Wolves and that was too much of a conflict. But the amount of stuff that goes on behind the scenes of an organization in terms of, all the stuff that Shams and Woj, want to sniff at, there is so much weird family drama and weird personality quirks and weird lifestyle happenstances and just so much stuff that which is all to say that I would be shocked if they haven't just directly said to Nas, we got you. We are, don't worry about this, And then the question becomes, how fat is the we got you number? That. Yeah. And,
it's a fair question for Nas to ask,
Exactly. And I think that they are also kind of counting on the fact that Nas is the longest tenured Timberwolf on the team.
Sure.
And has great loyalty. I mean, he is a folk hero here. Yeah. And so it will be an interesting, the McDaniels section has turned out to be a Nas Reid section, but I was actually fine,
It fits the Cat coming to town part too, because
it does
because there was going to be like
Cat's gone.
Right, or like what was Nas going to look like without Cat, and the reality of the situation is Nas kind of looks like what Nas looked like with Cat, because they kind of made a new Cat in Julius Randle, so it's navigating those sort of things. I'm actually glad I did not have that down in the outline. I'm glad we touched on that. You got anything else you want to hit on before we go here?
No, I'm good. Holiday weirdness. I have all these people that are coming through town and then not coming through town and so on and so forth. But it's really it's kind of fun. And my son is huge into Christmas, so it's been an interesting time because for the second time in 2 weeks we have these huge layoffs.
I know.
And
days off.
Yeah, and then MinPost doesn't publish. They take a holiday off. So, I mean, my writing will not be as frequent for the next week or 10 days. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a weird, it's not a vacation because the Wolves are in the swing. And I don't necessarily want a vacation because they're playing really well right now. And so it's a fun team to analyze. And they still have their obvious flaws, but hats off to, Finch and the staff and to the players themselves. They've fixed a lot of ugly seams in their deal, and tonight or tomorrow night's a big test. It's in addition to all the drama surrounding past associations with teams and what Cat has represented. The Wolves have not played an offense like this in quite a while.
No, it's I feel you on the Christmas related things too, where you're like, I'm like, they play the Mavericks on Christmas Day.
There you go.
Probably a trip I would normally go on. It's certainly a game I would do a podcast on the next day, but it's Christmas and we have like family in town and all that.
And just the whole idea of the Wolves playing on Christmas is alien. And it's like, we've been to a lot more playoff games than we've been to Wolves Christmas games.
That's true. a lot more. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about it. This might be our the last pod you and I do of 2024.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, because I guess we got Christmas a week away from today. So, but this was a good one. I've been looking forward to the Cat matchup, this game on Thursday. But I have been looking forward to talking about it as well. So, appreciate you coming on, man.
Sure.
You guys can all follow Britt on Twitter at Britt Robson. You can read his column. Where is it here? The resurgence of Jaden McDaniels is a major boost for the Timberwolves, which really is, I think, we've been talking about it a good about here, but really is a big part of the story of this defense turning around. It kind of started with Rudy and figuring out how he was going to function, but now like the infantry is there, Nikhil, Jaden. Talk about, you got Mike as options, you got Dante as option, Ant as option. They look like a real defensive team. When I think even a week ago when we were talking, we're like, yeah, probably, but they're up to third in defensive rating on the season. You know that?
And the versatility. I mean, what the takeaway I want people to get on this McDaniels thing to some extent, because everybody knows he's capable of being a great defender. And I've kind of badmouthed his defense. I thought he was overrated last year. I don't think he was a bad defender by any means. I don't think he was an all-defensive All NBA defensive player last year. But not only is his defense improving, but there are ways, we just talked about it, obviously, where his shooting, his lack of fouling, his interior defensive presence, his ability to get out in transition, the team can use him more flexibly than they could have 3 weeks ago
100%.
or last season or the season before. If Finch does want to get, freaky with some of his rotations and does want to expand the bench,
just listen to the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah. So, I think that the versatility factor, that's what you want your second timeline guys to do. You want them to show you options of how your team can flex in the near future and the far future.
Oh.
And that's probably big picture the most promising thing about what's going on with him right now, especially rebounding.
And I did like how you covered that towards the end of the piece. Again, everyone can go check that out over at minpost.com, or you can find it on Britt's Twitter, Blue Sky, there as well. Coming up next for us with this show is Friday morning. Kyle Teige and I will talk about whatever does go down in Wolves Knicks, and then we'll move into the Christmas week from there. But until Friday with Kyle, he's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.